Welcome to Making Money Matter, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kerry Stevenson. I've asked Russell Bradford. He's the managing director of Aston Minerals. ASX code is ASO. Now, Aston Minerals, they've got a massive, it's pretty big. It's over 1 billion tons of nickel up in Canada. But I'm known as that gold lady. They've also got some gold up there, about 1.5 million ounces. So I've asked Russell to come on board because everyone out there, you've all spoken to me before and said, nickel. Well, nickel might be on the nose, but according to my conversation with Rick Rule recently, he likes nickel. You all know Rick is a contrarian investor, and potentially what we need to look for is good deposits, but more importantly, good management, because you can have the best deposit in the world, but you need good management behind it. So I've asked Russell to come on board, introduce himself to us, because he joined Aston Minerals, I think it was just over a year ago. He'll correct me if I'm wrong. So he's in the hot seat today telling us why Aston Minerals, we need to sit up and take some notice. Look, putting it out there as well, the share price has been smashed, probably due to the nickel market being on the nose at the moment and some changes, I guess. So, Russell, great to see you. Thanks for joining me on Making Money Matter, or should
Thank you, Kerry.
Making Nickel Matter, Making Nickel and Gold Matter. Nice to see you.
That's good. Nice to see you. Yes, I've been in the job just over a year and it's been quite an interesting year, but we'll get into a bit of that now.
Okay, great. First up, one of the things that I wanted to ask you is you've got quite a good handle on the nickel market. You've got a good background in nickel, because a lot of people might not know who is Russell Bradford and why are you a good custodian. My question to you is, why did you join? What do you like about this project? Why did you look at this? Because you understand this market. What is it about this project that attracted you?
Well, I was introduced to this project last year in March at PDAC. I met some of the existing shareholders and they were looking for a development team. I've been in the game, 35 years now, and a metallurgist. So I've operated mines, I've run mines, built mines. So I kind of get the picture, that technical bit of what needs to be done. I suppose Aston got to a point, it did a lot of drilling, defined the resource, and it was now, well, we need now to bring on a developer, somebody who understands the technical work that needs to be done. And a lot of people say, well, here's the boring bit, because now you're just going to spend money, you're going to, do drilling, do test work, do this, do engineering, or environmental, all of that stuff. And as we all know, that takes time, but that's the detail that projects need. So I suppose with Aston now, if I look back over the last, and it has been a year, and you click your fingers and the year's gone. And
I don't know.
we all look at the macro environment of nickel, and we can get into that, later in our discussion. We all know what's going on with Indonesia. We know what's going on certainly here in Australia with nickel mines, big nickel mines closing down. You have, the world's largest mining company, BHP, reviewing their business, and it's all in Australia. Well, we're in Canada, and there's a fundamental difference, and I've learned this, I've seen this, and every time I go to Canada, I actually experience it. So I think certainly not trying to say this us and them, but there's some fundamental differences that I think investors need to probably maybe understand a little bit, and certainly take note of if they want to get into nickel stocks in the future.
Okay, well, before we get into the specifics of Aston, what are those differences and why should people be paying attention right now? Because also, I believe you're moving to Toronto, so you're currently in Australia, but you're actually relocating very shortly across to Toronto, like getting across.
You get to a point in a project. I mean, Ghana, Accra, Dar es Salaam, all these weird and funny places you go stand when you do projects. But it's got to a point where there's so much going on that I can spend my life flying back and forth and spending money on airplane tickets. Or let's just say, well, let's give this a proper go.
Okay.
And that's the decision that we've made. I'm going to go stay over there. My wife's coming with, and we'll stay till the end of the year. And there's a few things that need to be done. And you can really only do them with the time zones, and also you just got to be there and do it. So that's one of the realities of doing a project this other side of the world. Sooner or later, you're going to have to make the decision to go there. So
Okay, well, let's get into, if we could, the difference, because you said it before, the difference between Canada. What is it about Canada that is quite into? Oh, okay. What's this?
So this is a look. This is from Benchmark. So this is not Russell putting things together. And Benchmark, I subscribe. They've given me permission to use this. And this was in their recent monthly newsletter, and there was quite an interesting article about nickel in North America. So let's just, if you think about North America, we all hear about the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act.
Yeah.
And essentially what that says is we have a lot of money. We will allocate that money to projects that are friends and allies of the IRA. So if you look at what's going on with Indonesia, with a lot of the Chinese sponsored smelters and plants and mining that's going on there, that nickel as it stands will not qualify for IRA as it is today.
Okay.
Right. So now, and we all know what's going on in Indonesia, and they're doing a great job. They are producing a lot of nickel. Over 50% of the world's nickel comes from Indonesia at the moment, and it's going to continue to probably 20, 30, maybe 60, 70%. So that's the nickel space at the moment. And to me, my view, China has said it's strategic. We need to grab hold of a guaranteed supply. That is what Indonesia's doing. Well, IRA does a similar thing. And if you look at companies like Panasonic, SK, LG, Samsung, these are companies from South Korea and Japan that qualify for IRA assistance. They are coming to Canada. They are coming to Canada because already there's a solid, sound automotive industry in Ontario and in Quebec. Large car manufacturing companies are already there. So just 2 weeks ago, Honda announced a $15 billion investment in an existing operation that they've got for EVs. We saw a couple of months ago, Ford and SK have announced a $2 billion investment in Quebec to produce batteries for the EV space. So this is going to continue, and it's exactly what these two graphs say. If you look at the Japanese and South Korean companies that are moving and actually expanding and converting in North America for that EV IRA compliant industry. So I look at this and I say, where do we see this in Australia? And you look at the Australian nickel companies and I say, where is their opportunity to link and to partner with companies in Australia for their nickel businesses? Whereas if you look at investment, so for example, there's a company called Canada Nickel who are actually right next door to me. We're a very similar project. And at Christmas, they announced an $18 million investment from Samsung. So it's a battery manufacturer going to a nickel company that has a 0.23 nickel grade and investing in that company. Well, maybe it's because they're IRA compliant. And these companies cannot go and get nickel from Indonesia and start. And they do that, and that's for that market. But now, if you want to have your market in North America, which is where we are, then companies like this have to look for commodity to use for batteries and car manufacturing within that IRA compliant, let's say, zone. It's interesting because a lot of people say, you know, you've got clean nickel and you've got dirty nickel. That's like the word on the street now. And so maybe you can get a premium for your clean nickel. I don't think that'll happen. That's my view. I don't think so. I think that's going to be a tough discussion. But I think as suppliers and mining companies, depending what address you're in, that's the market that you will go and follow. So if you hear and you sell to China, it will go to Chinese manufacturers. They'll produce beautiful cars. and that's your business model. We're in Canada. We're not allowed to do that. We will have to follow IRA. And then you can see the investment from these two graphs that is happening, the expansion of these battery factories within Canada. Well, that's where we'll tap into. This is multi-billion dollars investment over, and this is not the next 30 years. This is the next couple of years. This is what's happening right now in Canada and in Ontario.
So I guess what you're saying is that location and the location of your project is what's key. And I want to get into that in a minute if we could. But if I can just ask you another couple of questions about the bigger picture, and then we'll come back onto your specifics. What do you see? Because you spoke about Indonesia, we've spoken about what's going on in the nickel market. And you spoke about Canada versus Australia. So do you think that because your deposit is where it is, and we'll bring stuff up in a minute, but I just want to understand, is that the key to the success of this project, do you think?
I think it's a major contributor. Obviously, there's the technicalities of the project. It has to work.
Yeah.
The economics have to stack up. No one's going to go and fund or invest or give assistance to a company that can't, pay for itself on a daily basis. So we have to make that's just a fundamental of economics. You could argue that in Indonesia, just to get back, because, the Chinese have come and sponsored a lot of projects. Are those projects making money at the moment? Well, a lot of them aren't. You do the numbers, they won't be making money, but it's about guaranteed supply. Because where can they get that nickel from to get into this EV space, which is one of these new industrial revolution kind of things that are happening over the next 30 years. We're in the Western world, we've got shareholders, we have to give a return. So our model is slightly different.
Okay, and speaking of shareholders, if I could, your market cap is about 15 mil. You've been smashed, and I said it earlier that the nickel market is challenging at the moment. What would you say to current shareholders and people that, maybe even former shareholders, if you like, that what are you going to do to turn that around? What's the future look like? Is the future brighter for Aston? Because I'm being blunt with you, Russell. It's been a hard road.
Well, it's been hard. Look, I mean, when we came on board, we had to go and do a raise. We had to put a project plan together. Look, if you look at Aston, there was 28,000 meters of drilling done, and we had this huge inferred resource. Well, what we've done over the last year is done some targeted infill drilling. We've got a decent indicated resource now. We've had to understand the fundamentals of the metallurgy. Having such a large ore body, there isn't consistency everywhere. You have to understand where the good, the bad, and the ugly is, right?
Okay.
So we've had to do all of that. We've announced all of this, and people can see now we've got a flow sheet. Now we know this is the flow sheet. Now we know we've got an indicated resource. And there's other minor things like, like I'm moving to Canada, so I'm going to now spend a lot more time at functions with government and creating a network there for Aston. Going to be managing a lot of the engineering that we're going to start doing now. There's no more drilling, so if you want to spend money in Canada, put a rig on site because you're going to spend a lot of money. So you better get it right. So there's no drilling this year. And why I bring that up is because we've still got 5 million in the bank. We're not going to spend much money this year. So there's no raise coming up. So I think that's very important for people to understand. There's no raise this year. And even if we carry on, we won't have to do one next year, right? We'll have enough money to carry on doing what we're doing. And you've touched on it, and there's the opportunity that we can monetize the gold. And I think that's very important for shareholders. It's non-dilutive. I've got a board meeting on Wednesday. We're going to discuss and hopefully approve the process. I've got a company waiting for me in Toronto. We'll run a 3-month process. We are in the address right where the biggest gold mines in Canada are, left and right of me. So we're in a good spot. We've got 1.5 million ounces of gold. We monetize that. Let's say we walk away with 10, $20 million. Well, that's going to keep the company going again for at least another 2 years. So I'm just, we're doing the right work and we've come on board at kind of ground zero. And I think we touched on it earlier. A lot of people refer to this, it's a bit of the boring bit. But this is what people invest in. The clever people look at this work and they say, you're doing the right work. I go back to when we sold Lionel for $7 billion and we started off a 20 million company, right?
Wow.
Perm rolls running in Botswana, recovering nickel using perm rolls, dust everywhere. This is 1995. And it slowly built up. And 10 years later, and when the Extratas and the Norilsk Nickels did their DD, and we had all the mines running and all the studies going, they look and they say, this is quality people, this is quality work, this is how mining companies run. Well, Aston's no different. I talk a lot in my presentations about the technicalities of what we're doing. I think that's important.
Mm.
And I talk as well about the fundamentals of the nickel world and where we are. I think that's important. And I will carry on to do that because, I I'll tell a quick story. I had a shareholder phone me when we came on board, and I don't think he's a shareholder anymore. Basically saying, well, you guys have come on board now, you're going to build the mine. Well done. Like, when does it kick off?
Oh my goodness.
Well,
Oh
it's not
dear.
happening. No. So, I suppose I look at Aston and I say it's in Canada. We had all our First Nation agreements in place, which is important, very important, right? We're in Timmins. And
Wait, sorry. Well, when you say we're in Timmins, where is Timmins? Why is Timmins important?
let me show you this. Here's a map. So if you look at where we are, we're south of Timmins. We're just about 50K. So we're on like a sealed road. There's no camp. We're not remote. When we first went to this site, it's probably the most unremote place that I've ever worked in my life. I'm not joking. It is. It is. Timmins is like Kalgoorlie on steroids. It is like this massive mining district. And then you see young Davidson, Cote. Well, these are, 15, 20 million ton a year mills that are processing 1 gram per ton dirt through their mills. So that's iron gold. You've got Kirkland Lake. You've got all the big mining companies left and right of us. So that's why Timmins is there. That's the big mine center.
and, and
Now,
and I noticed, sorry to interrupt you, I noticed Canada Nickel is above Timmins. And from my research, and correct me if I'm wrong, Canada Nickel has got a resource almost identical, but I think their nickel, their head grade, if you like, is a little bit less than yours. They're 60K or so north of you. But I think it's important for people to just hear this as well, that their market cap's, I think it's about 300 mil, and your market cap's 15 mil. Now, what I want to understand here, Russell, is what is the difference between Aston Minerals' boomerang resource, if you like, your projects, right, and Canada Nickel? Because 15 mil versus 300 mil, that's quite a big difference. Is it because they're Canadian company? Just explain that for me, because I was scratching my head a little bit.
okay, it's a very interesting question, and it's something that I think as shareholders we need to understand, because there's obviously a script there, and there's obviously been a very successful project plan put together. And as you say, they're sitting at $300 million market cap, TSX listed, so it's a Canadian nickel company. I spoke about the companies left and right of me. In Canada, they do big tons. They're not blessed like we are in Australia with higher grade, small ton a deposit. They low grade, they're big deposits. So mining large tonnages is not an issue for Canadians. It's just something they do. If you look at Canada Nickel, they probably 2.5 years ahead of us. They've done 100,000 meters of drilling. We've done 35,000 meters of drilling. So that's kind of like the differential. Their head grade is slightly lower than ours, but their metallurgy is almost identical. Almost identical. They have a bit of chromite in the deposit. We don't have that. So that's pretty much the difference.
Talk to me like a 5-year-old. What does it mean, the chromite in the deposit?
Well, they've got just chrome, so they have to remove that from their nickel, but they produce a chrome nickel thing that gets sold into the stainless steel business.
Okay.
Now, if we look at what Canada Nickel have done and the success, they've actually completed their definitive feasibility. So they've doing all their feasibility work, and you can go online, check out their numbers, and see the great job that they've done under the leadership of Mark Selby, who's a nickel guy through and through. Fantastic guy, right?
Really good guy.
Well. But if you look at Canada Nickel, they last year Anglo American took 9.9% into the company for $25 million. At Christmas, Agnico Eagle, one of the largest gold companies in Canada, when it invested over $35 million into Canada Nickel. And then 2 days after that, Samsung, the same company that I showed you on the graph there, who are now expanding in North America, $18 million invested in Canada Nickel, a 0.23% nickel project in Timmins. You've got three big companies there, two massive mining companies and a battery manufacturer. I've invested equity into Canada Nickel, and Samsung's investment did not include any offtake. It was an equity investment, so not even an offtake. And in his announcement, he talks about if they want offtake, they have to pay X. So it's in black and white. So I look at Canada Nickel and I look at where we are and I look at the fact we're in Canada, and you take another company like FPX, who are less than 0.2% nickel in BC. Sumitomo and Outokumpu have made just recently a $20 million investment in that company. Now, the reason why we're slightly different, I just want to get into this between Australian nickel companies and what we're seeing in Canada. We're lower grade, but our mineralogy, so in other words, the ingredients that make up the nickel, our nickel particles are very rich in nickel. So the concentrates we produce are very high grade. And it is what it is. So if you're mixing a cake and you want to put a lot more richer ingredients and it's going to taste very rich, even though the cake's the same size, well, it's what's gone into the cake.
Okay.
So our recipe, our mixture in Canada is very different to what we see in West Australia. And I know if you get back to Aston and you say, well, why have you been smashed, our share price? I think a lot of it is to do with people seeing the fundamentals of nickel. And I get why, but they say, well, Indonesia's taken the market, it's done. Game over. Well, there's a difference now because we're in North America and we can see that's being acknowledged by the battery suppliers and the automotive industry, which is very different to see what we in Australia. But the second thing is, as well as the quality of the concentrate we produce in Canada at these much lower grades compared to what we see in Australia as well. So
let's just stop screen sharing for a second, because I want to I've got a couple of questions for you, because I really want to understand, Russell, about the confidence, I guess, in the resource, your confidence in this resource, going back to, you know, shareholders have been battered a little bit. What have you done? How have you progressed some of the metallurgical results for this project? Have you done that? Because you said earlier, no more drilling in 24. It's going to be all about, I guess, scoping study and met results, etc. Talk to us through the progress, if you like.
So let's just wind back again 8 months ago. So we put this project plan together. We said, well, we need to get our indicated resource higher than what it is now, because if we want to go and do a JORC compliant study, we need that mass. We need that level of confidence in the resource. So we went and did that, and that's been announced. So we've got over 600,000 tons now of nickel in indicated resource. So we did an extra bit of drilling, brought the resource up to surface, and this is all in my presentation and it's all been announced. So in terms of the level of confidence of the resource, it's there and it's JORC compliant and everything's all good. So that's fine. Then we look at the metallurgy and we said, look, let's now go and put a flow sheet together. So we did a lot of met work based on the original call from the 28,000 meter program we did. We're using the same laboratories as Canada Nickel, the same engineers as Canada Nickel, the same process as Canada Nickel. It is like not cut and paste, but it is because it's the same kind of mineralogy. So you can slice and dice it as much as you want, but you're going to get back to the same kind of answer. And it's the same engineers looking at it. And we announced that in our announcement. So, and we've come up now with a flow sheet. Now, why is that important? We've got a flow sheet now. So you say you can take anything from that deposit now and put it into that flow sheet, because the flow sheet's fixed. We're not playing around with it anymore. And now the ore body will start to talk to you. And that's important. When you want to understand what an ore body's doing, get your flow sheet right. Once that's fixed, then you can say, right, now let's take core from here, 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 and you can start to create geometallurgical domains. So in other words, what is the geology and what is the metallurgy response? Now let's start building this geometallurgical model, because that's the fundamentals of the financials of the business. We have to get that right. I'm getting quite detailed here, but there's no other way you can do it.
Yeah, and we are running out of time. I've just got one quick one.
But just to finish, sorry to interrupt, but all of that work, so all the drilling that we've done at Bardwell now for that indicated resource is being composited right now in Timmins, and it's going to go back to Coram, and that's all going to run through this flow sheet now. So if you talk about news flow, there'll be a lot of updates on the metallurgy and the recoveries and the response that we get from our indicated resource of this ore body.
So a lot of news coming up. There was a comment that you made in one of your presentations, and I just need to understand it. You said it's not so much about the nickel, it's about the sulfur.
So this talks about, I mean, if you talk about why do you recover what you recover? So we recover nickel, and that's just a consequence of other things. When you're trying to understand recovering, you're trying to understand metallurgy, and you're trying to understand the composition of the ore body, we don't just look for nickel now, we look for sulfur, we look for iron, because they are the associations that give you the consequence, which is the recovery.
Okay, got it.
So it's not just about we're a nickel company. Now, sure, we'll produce nickel, but it's other things that make you produce nickel, not just nickel. Nickel almost comes out because of other things. You've got to get your head around, well, what are those other things?
So the big thing to come out soon will be a scoping study, is that right?
Yeah, so I'd love to get that done by the end of the year.
Okay.
We need a nice little 50-pager that gives this is what this business looks like. So it's very important there. So I'm going to be working on that a lot this next 6 months.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, as that shareholder asks, they're not in there to build a mine at the moment. They're in there to make sure the economics are sound, that they've got a resource that works. They're in an area in Canada. It's very different working in Canada versus working in Australia. And I don't know, the Indonesian nickel market might be on fire at the moment, but as Russell said earlier, that Inflation Reduction Act in North America actually means that jurisdiction is really important. So, Russell, let's wrap it up in a nice little bow and tell our beautiful audience out there why 3 reasons why you think they should be sitting up and taking notice of Aston Minerals right now?
Well, first, I think it's important we have a good team, and that is all our stakeholders, our First Nation groups, the government, the management, and the project. So I think that's a tick in the box. And where we are, we're in Ontario, Timmins, great location. I think, someone said to me a couple of days ago, they think nickel's the new uranium. Well, when you hear that, then you say, well, I mean, I just say, I like nickel, so I'm biased. So someone said that to me. So, the clever guys start to say, well, what's out of favor? Well, that's where we need to be. So we've seen that. I mean, we've all been around, we've seen that. So I think that's got a tick in the box. And I think as well, in terms of our finances as a company, I think selling the gold, we're very responsible on our money now. So short term, there's no raise, there's no money required. We're in good shape. So I would say stakeholders, what's out of flavor, and the fundamentals of this company, and our share price at 1.3, 1.4 cents, 15 million market cap. Well, there's a lot of upside there.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Russell Bradford, he is the managing director of Aston Minerals. He certainly has a very long history in the nickel business. He understands it, not just the fundamentals, but the big picture. Watch out. Lots of news flow coming ahead. I'm sure we'll have them back on Making Money Matter again in the future. But for now, hit like and subscribe if you like this interview, and we'll look forward to seeing you again sometime soon. Russell, good luck with the move. We'll see you again.
Thank you. Thank you, Kerry.